So today I want to talk about practice, and specifically I want to talk you through my approach to practicing the guitar and how that's changed over the years. Hopefully this video is going to give you some things to think about to help you decide what you should be working on. So I've been playing guitar for 15 years, and what I decided to practice when I first started is different to what I practice now that I'm a little bit more experienced. But the one thing that has remained the same is that all of my practice is always done to help me make better music. So let me talk you through the timeline of my journey on the guitar, and I'm going to explain a little bit about my mindset to practice through the various different stages. When I first started learning, I probably, like most people, just wanted to be able to play music as quickly as possible. I think a lot of people, when they learn, they think that they need to learn a lot of theory and that the theoretical context of the music that they play is very, very important. But for me, theory came a little bit later. For me, I just wanted to learn as quickly as possible the things that would help me play along to the songs that I wanted to learn. So I would always have my CD player in my room, and I would be on the internet downloading tabs, and I would just be trying to recreate the sound of the records that I was listening to. For me, it was a pursuit of making the guitar feel comfortable to play. I just really wanted to make sure that my chord changes were feeling very fluid, that I was playing in time, and if I was learning a riff or a guitar solo, I wasn't thinking about modes or scales. I was just trying to replicate what I was hearing, whether that's through the way that the guitarist was bending a string or applying vibrato, or even just learning more about their tone. If anything, in the early days of my guitar playing, the thing that I was practicing was listening more than it was practicing the guitar. And that's kind of something that hasn't ever changed. Because I love music and I'm so passionate about songs, I'm always listening out for things to take away from those arrangements, whether it's a particular tone or where the actual musician has chosen to play and where they've chosen not to play. And you know, I think we're going to be students of that kind of thing forever. But I think developing your ear so you're able to pick up on things like how to achieve a certain tone or how to mimic a certain guitar player, I think that's a very, very valuable skill that will pay dividends as you become more and more experienced, as I'll explain as we go through this video. So after a few years of playing along to records in my bedroom, I knew that the end goal for me was always going to be to put myself into musical situations and to play music. I knew in high school that I wanted to, join bands and to play with other musicians, and I felt like putting in the reps at home of learning how to play along to different songs meant when we were looking to choose our set list for the covers we were going to play in our first band, then it kind of put me in a pretty good place. It meant I was already comfortable in that context of being able to play along to, other instruments and being able to at least start to figure out how to achieve some of the tones on some of the covers that we were doing. For example, if we were playing a Red Hot Chili Peppers song, then sometimes I'd spend more time in getting the tone right, understanding the effect that maybe John Frusciante was using on that particular song, or, trying to recreate some of his phrasing ideas of how he maybe played some pentatonic licks. And I was focusing more on that and practicing those elements more so than I was practicing, how to just play a pentatonic scale. Because I think that's the thing that has always been the most interesting to me is kind of applying some of these theoretical things into a musical context. I was never really a fan of just running scales up and down, because yes, it teaches you the patterns and it teaches you the notes, but I wanted to play music, so I wanted to sort of apply those theoretical concepts to songs. So now let's fast forward to 10 years ago when I just graduated university and was playing as a session musician for the first time. So this is me playing with a singer-songwriter on a TV recording. At this point, I felt like I'd found my feet in terms of, being comfortable playing with other musicians. That element wasn't something that I really needed to practice anymore, and because we were playing together all the time, there wasn't really a lot of time to practice. A lot of the practice was kind of done just by being in the same room with these people and playing songs over and over again. But something really changed for me during this period, because I was no longer just trying to cover other musicians and other songs. I was actually having to write my own parts, and I was having to kind of, fit into a band that was already slightly established. And that then took me in a slightly different direction, and it made me realize that I needed to practice some things that I hadn't really worked on in the past. I think whenever you start writing or improvising or coming up with original parts on the guitar, there are going to be some theoretical things that if you practice them makes that process just a little bit easier, and you become a little bit more free in terms of the options that you have available to you. At this point, my practice became less about just learning songs, and it became more about how to write good guitar parts and how to fit into a song and how to fit into an arrangement or an ensemble. At this point in my career, my approach to practicing kind of hinged upon these two things. It's what am I interested in and what do I want to learn? And the second is what do I need to practice and what do I need to learn to enable me to be able to play the types of music that I want to play. Now, I don't want to be a musical chameleon on the guitar. I don't want to be able to play every genre, and I don't want to be able to play every single technique, but I do want to be able to play the guitar well in the style that interests me most. Now, I was playing with a lot of singer-songwriters, a lot of acoustic acts, and it was all in the Americana, country, blues, rock kind of genre. So I really focused my practice on what are the fundamentals or what are the elements that I need in my playing to enable me to play those styles effectively. This is where the practice of listening kind of came full circle again, because I was, yes, absolutely learning things like the cage system and how to play all of my major and minor triads up and down the neck, and delving a little bit deeper into minor and sort of major pentatonic scales. But that was kind of the extent of it in a guitar sense, but I was listening and watching a lot of other musicians who I was looking up to who were trying to do a similar thing that I was. Now, we all probably have guitar heroes, we all love Jimi Hendrix or Eric Clapton or people like John Mayer, and those are great people to look up to in terms of kind of their chops on the instrument. But when you're trying to find guitar players that are doing the thing that you're doing, those types of guitar players don't always teach you a lot because they're kind of front and center and they're doing all of the kind of guitar acrobats, but that isn't necessarily what I was being hired to do. So I was always looking for more of the unsung guitar heroes, the sidemen, and trying to understand what they were bringing to the kind of musical situations they were in. Kind of examples that spring to mind immediately are how Michael Landau used to play guitar for James Taylor, how players like David Lindley and Val McCallum played on Jackson Browne's records, and how session guitarists such as Tom Bukovac approach recording and sort of playing on other people's records. It was listening and watching to these guitarists that really helped me kind of develop the things that would put me in good stead in those musical situations, either in the studio or playing live. So the practice of listening to music, I think, is equally as important as the practice of actually picking up the guitar and playing, just by being objective and looking at those, those influences and seeing how they approach playing over a simple chord arrangement or how they approach phrasing in a solo. This is the kind of gold mine that I was sort of trying to get better at. And as you play with more and more people, and as you put yourself in musical situations, that's where this kind of second half of my mantra comes into play, of what are the things that I need to work on to enable me to play the style of music that I want to a little bit better. And this kind of comes from finding the gaps in your knowledge. And when you're in musical situations where you're called upon to become original and to think creatively, that's where you'll find the gaps in your understanding of the guitar. And that's what always informs my practice then. I feel like I'm kind of at a point where I have a good understanding of the instrument and the genres that I play in, but there might be examples where I'm in the studio and there's a chord progression and it's catching me off guard a little bit because it's maybe slightly modal in a way that I'm not familiar with, and I don't know the best way to sort of like play over that progression. So that will then be a catalyst for me to go away and to practice that. So if I'm in that situation again, I won't be caught out. And I think that's a good way of kind of keeping yourself honest. It's that objectivity that we all need to have to be able to look at our own playing and be able to be, you know, brutally honest with ourselves about the things that we struggle with. Like I mentioned earlier, this idea of what do you need to practice to get better, it's always going to be based on what you want to achieve musically. You know, don't look for gaps in your playing just because, you know, I can't play legato. It doesn't mean that I need to learn to play legato, because that's just not going to be a technique that's going to help me to create the music that I make. But it's looking at those objective gaps of, you know, based on the music that you want to perform, what are the things that you need to work on to help you do that better. And as long as you are practicing with that in mind, I don't think you can go far wrong. So as guitarists, we are music lovers. We are always going to be following our interests. You know, there's going to be things that we come into contact with musically that inspire us, that we want to learn more about. And, you know, we're going to be forever learning and forever wanting to practice. But I definitely don't buy into this whole kind of approach of, you know, you need to know this and you need to know that. Because what I need to practice and what I need to know is probably different to maybe what you need to practice. So those types of videos aren't particularly useful to me, but I definitely think having an approach to practicing that serves you well, I think is definitely in the long run going to make you a better guitar player. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic in the comments below. Let me know where you kind of fall in your musical journey at the moment. What are the types of things that you're working on? And if you did find this video helpful, do make sure to give it a thumbs up. Thanks so much for watching. If you haven't already, do consider hitting the subscribe button and ring the bell to get notified of when new videos go live. And I will see you all next time for another video.